Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for attending our webinar series. Today, we have an amazing presenter. We're so excited for her to be here today. Let me go ahead and introduce her. Her name is Fawzya Khosti. She is with Fawzya Khosti Executive Functioning Coach. She is truly an executive functioning expert. She has worked with numerous learners to help them reach success, and we're so excited today for her to be here with her presentation, Setting Your Kids Up for Success in 2024. It's going to be a good year. All right, Fawzya, thank you so much for being here today. I'm going to go ahead and hand the presentation over to you.
Thank you so much, Tammy. And yes, 2024 is going to be a fantastic year. We've had a couple challenging years, but you know what? The pendulum always swings. So this year is going to be fantastic. Today we're going to talk about setting your kids up for success in 2024. So before we talk about the tips and recommendations, I want to just clarify some things about what is executive functioning. Before we even get to what executive functioning is, I want to talk about the brain development. So executive functioning is housed in your frontal lobe, and your brain develops from the inside out and the back to the front. Therefore, your frontal lobe is the last part of the brain to develop, which means that a lot of our kiddos who have executive functioning challenges don't really have brain development that is complete until their mid to late 20s. For some, it might even be early 30s. And our frontal lobe development really helps us regulate our behavior. And that's a really important thing, because as you can see with kids who have executive functioning challenges, that's a big struggle for them. Another important thing to know about executive functioning is that these skills are also learned. Nobody's born with these skills. So we learn them from our parents, we learn them from our teachers, we learn them from grandparents. If a parent or grandparent or teacher is also impaired in that area, then students may not get the skills that they need. If they have ADHD or if they're on the spectrum, they're not going to get the skills that they need because their attention might be, bouncing back and forth from one thing to another. So they might have gaps in their learning. So there's a lot of reasons why somebody might not actually obtain their executive functioning skills fully. These executive functioning skills allow us to organize our behavior over time to override impulsivity. And you can see this very much especially in ADHD kiddos. And this is so that we can make long-term goals. We can really control our behavior and have better outcomes, more efficient, more effective outcomes. If your child has asynchronous development, they could also have executive functioning challenges, but really strong intellectual skills. So they can be highly gifted and still have executive functioning challenges. I have a daughter that has a lot of asynchronous development. She was incredibly gifted intellectually, but her executive functioning skills were a lot to be desired. She had a lot of challenges in that area. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what the most common executive functioning skills are. These are the ones that I tend to run across the most. This is not a list of every executive functioning challenge that's out there. These are just the ones that I tend to run across. Most kiddos come to me because their parents tell me they have time management, organizational challenges, or they can't prioritize, or their memory is poor. A lot of times kids come because they have struggled so much that they've lost their motivation. Or maybe they can't regulate they have difficulty with self-regulation or problem solving. So there's a lot of reasons, a lot of different executive functioning skills can be problematic for a child. And this can also happen for adults. I do see adults as well. And we have adults all the way into their 70s. I see adults all the way into their 70s who have struggles with executive functioning skills. It can also happen, if a person has PTSD or traumatic brain injury. There's a lot of reasons. There's a list of reasons as to why somebody can have executive functioning challenges. But from my perspective, it doesn't really matter how they got to that place. I'm more interested in how we resolve the issue. From a kid's perspective, from a parent's perspective, I hear a lot of parents come to me, and this is the really important list. This is what you want to listen for as a teacher. This is what you want to notice as a parent. These are the things that people say. They don't come to me and say, my child has a difficulty with metacognition, or my child has difficulty with, time management. They come in, this is what I hear. They have, they don't feel good about themselves. They're not feeling confident in their abilities at school. Their grades are dropping, or their grades all of a sudden, they're just getting all Fs. They don't finish their homework, or they might finish their homework, but they don't turn it in. They don't write down their homework. They don't use their calendar. They don't complete the work in class. But what I find interesting is that it's very compartmentalized. Like, they can finish their homework, but not turn it in. They can finish their homework and turn it in partially finished. So it just depends on the student. A lot of times they don't pay attention. They can't focus. They're easily distracted. Back in the day when kids had backpacks and desks where they had paper, they had messy desks. They couldn't find anything in their room. Nowadays, when they're online, they can't find their homework online. Things are a little bit scattered. They might be late for classes. They might have a really poor morning routine or a poor evening routine. They can't find the things that they need. They can't find their shoes, or maybe they don't have time for breakfast, or they don't have time to brush their hair, or when they get dressed, they're wearing mismatched clothes. And a lot of times they just plain lack motivation and have difficulty persevering. Oops, sorry. All right, so here's some recommendations. And before we get started on recommendations, I want to talk about my daughter. This is my daughter, Emily, and this is an old picture. She is now 25, and she is she's at Scripps. She's doing her residency in psychiatry. And the reason why I like to talk about her, well, other than the fact that I absolutely love my kids, the reason I talk about her is because she was born prematurely, and she had a lot of struggles with executive functioning. And so she actually overcompensated by just remembering things. So she has a fantastic memory, but her executive functioning skills were very poor for many, many years. And a lot of really gifted kids will overcompensate by relying on their memory, and they do really well probably up to high school. And in college is when they start to struggle. And that's when they start saying, hey, I didn't know I needed to use a calendar. I didn't really understand how to use a calendar. And so it's really important to get these kiddos to start managing their time, managing their space really well, so that they don't struggle when they get to college or after college. She is now in her first year in residency, and I can tell you this kid struggled all the way through college with executive functioning skills. She had difficulty organizing her dorm room. She had difficulty with a lot of different organizational things, and it's taken a lot of work and a lot of effort on her part to get to where she is now. So we've talked a little bit about the common executive functioning skills, time management. Now, these are the ones that I use, that I work on the most. Time management, organization, planning, prioritization. Those tend to go together really, really well. So we can work on time management, organization, planning, and prioritization together. We can also add in task initiation, but sustaining attention, working memory, cognitive flexibility, we work on those a little bit separately. And motivation is something that kind of comes as a student recognizes that what they're doing is effective, and they start realizing, okay, I can do this, and then they start to get that motivation back into their life. Problem solving and self-regulation is something that we also work on separately, but overall, when I do work with a student, it's because we want to work on everything, and we do scaffold these skills. So we start at a lower level skill and then we move up. And when I do work on these skills, I do teach to mastery. So you want to make sure that you start at the very beginning and you teach to mastery, especially in a classroom, because if you have a student, for example, with ADHD and their attention's all over the place, they're going to have a lot of gaps in their learning. So you want to make sure that you eliminate those gaps. And the only way you can really do that is by starting at the beginning and just going step by step until you find where their gaps are. So here's how we can support our children with executive function deficiencies. These days, everything's online. School's online a lot. You know, whether you're in K through 8 or K through 12 or college, or even work, even individuals in the workplace, we do a lot of things online. One of the most important things that I can talk about when supporting kids with executive functioning skill deficiencies is patience. We as adults, we as parents have to be patient with their learning because we don't really understand where they're at with their learning. So the most important thing we can do is practice patience, time management, organization, motivation, self-care, and then managing situational anxiety, and then modeling best behavior. And we're going to talk more specifically about each one of these. Let's talk about online learning first. So you've got these kiddos who are online, and this is all over the country. This isn't just in one area. They're really struggling to keep everything organized online. It was hard enough just to organize things when they were, you know, when you had a stack of books and a notebook that, you know, was assigned to go with each book and everything was color coordinated. Now that they're online, it makes it a little bit more challenging. Kids tend to get bored when they're online. And so they open up multiple screens, and when they lose interest or when they find something to be difficult, they're going back and forth between different screens. So you want to make sure that your child isn't bored, that they have exactly what they need in front of them. You want to make sure they have the supplies that they need. Even when you're online, you still need pencil, you still need paper. You want to make sure that the space is organized. So I highly recommend you have it in a quiet spot. Make sure they have a comfortable chair. Make sure they have pencil, paper. For some kiddos, they need markers and crayons. And you can see from this picture, these two kiddos have different resources. So you want to make sure that they're very much in charge of their space and that they have what they need. Help them improve their self-discipline so that they can do the work without supervision. So once you have some rules in place, you have mitigated their boredom. You can use fidget tools for their boredom. You can use, a notebook. I actually encourage doodling while they're listening to lectures. A lot of teachers now, I think, understand that doodling is a very important part of the learning process. Sometimes parents get a little upset about that, but I think it's a really important thing. So have that notebook there so that they're not bored. Make sure they have all the appropriate supplies so they can do the work online without issue. And just make sure they're in a quiet space without interruption. Practicing patience. This is one of the most important things I think as a parent we can practice, or as a teacher or any other kind of practitioner. We don't know what this child's dealing with. We don't know, they could have other issues besides executive functioning challenges. So they could have an auditory issue, they could have a visual issue. And since we don't really know everything that's happening, just be patient with your child. Ask questions, talk to them, let them know you're on their side, you're on the same team, you're going to move forward together, and just really be patient and focus on teaching the skill and not just telling them what they need to do. And hopefully that makes sense. So as far as time management goes, I address this very simply. When we work on time management, it depends on the level. So for the younger kiddos, we may not work on a calendar, but we might work on maybe a to-do list, or we might talk about prioritization. And as they get older, we add the calendar. We might add a monthly overview calendar, a weekly overview, and then the daily to-do list. The most important thing on all of this is the to-do list and the prioritization, the ability to prioritize. How I recommend people prioritize is I use a 1, 2, 3. So when you're prioritizing your to-do list, you want to put a 1, a 2, or a 3 next to each item. So a number 1 is something that's fairly urgent, that's time sensitive, that needs to get done right away. And a number 2 is more regular items. They have to get done within a certain amount of time, but you have a little bit of time to do them. And a number 3 is more, it has to be done, but there's really no time limit to it. So, for example, number 1 might be a test. That a student has a test tomorrow. They have to study for it today. So that's a number 1. It's urgent and it's important. Therefore, it has to be taken care of first. Homework that may be due at the end of the week is a number 2. And the reason why it's a number 2 is because it's not really urgent. It's something that has to be done but can wait. So the number 1s can be done first, and then the number 2s. And then anything else can be a number 3. So if you need to change your oil, or you have a favorite TV show you want to watch and there's a new episode, something like that, that would be a 3. So it's a very easy prioritization system. But the most important thing about time management is you have to use it. If you don't use it, it doesn't mean anything. All right, so organization is a simple thing. You want to create a space for everything and then put everything in its place. And part of organization is decluttering, getting rid of anything that doesn't matter to you. That is anything that is, you're not using it, it doesn't mean anything to you. Declutter, get rid of those things that are not necessary to live your life as you choose to live. The cleaner your space, the faster you're going to find what you do need. I recommend, especially for kiddos, I recommend a bookshelf with baskets and have each basket labeled, pens, pencils, crayons, so on and so forth, so that they know where everything goes. And if you start young, they're going to get into that habit. So as they get older, they're going to know that if they put everything away, then it's easy to find. And so baskets are a really great way to start off when they're younger. And then as they get older, they continue with that habit, and they can adjust it and accordingly to fit their specific needs. All right, so let's talk a little bit about motivation. Motivation is probably, out of everything that we've ever talked about, the most important thing. If a child does not have motivation, it's really hard to get them to do anything. So find out what your child's currency is. What is it that makes them feel motivated? For some kids, it's the reward system. So you could offer them, a little toy at the end of the week, or maybe a little bit of money, like, a few dollars at the end of the week for turning in all their homework, or for doing all their homework and making sure it's turned in. You can find something that motivates your child. And the only way to find out what motivates your child is to observe them and talk to them, ask them. And as teachers, this is the same thing. If your kiddos in class are motivated by little prizes at the end of the week, then that's a really great thing. You found out what motivates them, and you can use that to help them learn and move forward in that positive direction. Without motivation, we really just don't move forward. So it's a very, very important thing to know about your kiddos. All right, so self-care. I don't know how many of you participate in self-care, but I find this to be incredibly important. And what do I consider part of self-care? Self-care is anything from meditation, going for a walk, listening to music, reading a book, having a cup of tea, maybe just sitting in the room binge watching your favorite TV show on a Saturday morning, or whatever it is you enjoy doing. Maybe even taking a bath. So if you enjoy something and it helps you relax and regroup, then that's what you need to do to feel good about life. your kiddos are no different. They also need something to feel good about themselves. So if your child likes to sit in their room and read books for a couple hours on a Saturday morning, that's fantastic. If they want to sit in the bathtub a little bit longer and just think about things, why not? If they enjoy going for walks and they want to go on a walk with you, that's a really great way to go learn a little bit more about your child, bond, have that wonderful connection with them that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise. So self-care is very important. It helps us relax. It helps us see things more clearly so that we can make better decisions and better problem solve. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is managing situational anxiety. A lot of times kids, even adults who have challenges, such as ADHD, or maybe they're on the spectrum, or maybe they have something else going on, or it's just executive functioning challenges, they sometimes get situational anxiety, especially right before maybe a test. Maybe they don't read as quickly as the other kids in the classroom, and so it takes them longer, and so they have a little bit of anxiety about that. So one of the things that you can handle, how you can handle this is by offering them, some situations where you can meditate, help them relax right before a test, a big test. You can talk about mindfulness, being in the moment, doing different exercises to help them feel a little bit less anxious. Another thing that you can try is ice water. So one of the things that I do with some of my students is I have them hold a glass of ice water and just hold their hand around it. It really helps calm down the limbic system. It really helps them feel less stressed. But for somebody who has really high anxiety, you can just take their hand and stick it in a glass or a bowl of ice water for 10, 15 seconds, and it makes a huge difference. They calm down almost instantly. So this is one of the ways that you can manage anxiety, or actually several ways you can manage anxiety. So there's a lot of things that you can do to manage anxiety that does not require medication. You can also do hypnotherapy. One of the things I didn't write on here is hypnotherapy. I offer hypnotherapy as a service, and I use it quite a bit for my clients who have anxiety, specifically test anxiety. It really helps them relax, helps them find a way to alleviate that anxiety before an exam. So it's just a very helpful way to move forward. All right, so let's talk a little bit about modeling best practices. As a parent, we all know that our kids, they don't really do what we tell them to do. They are more likely to do what we do. They're not necessarily going to, follow everything we tell them, but we have to remember that executive functioning skills are learned. And so if your child has executive functioning challenges and you know this, then you want to take the opportunity to teach skills that you maybe would not teach directly. Most kids learn them by observing, but for some kids you have to make a very specific effort to teach them a skill, like time management, like organization. So those are specific things that they need to learn, and you need to actually talk them through it. So make sure that you watch what you do, act accordingly, because your kids will basically learn whatever, they'll mimic whatever you're doing. When you're setting up your child for the best, and you know that they have executive functioning skill challenges, this is my recommendation to set them up for success. You want to make sure that they have a physical fitness routine. Maybe going for a 20-minute walk every single day. This is going to help calm them down. It helps them with their time management if it's a specific time. It helps them, if they're going to work out every day for 20 minutes, and by workout I mean they're going for a walk, or maybe they're going to the gym with you, or maybe they're playing basketball at the gym. whatever it is that they're going to do, they know they have to be there at a specific time. They know they have to be there for a specific amount of time. So if they go at 9 o'clock in the morning and they're going to be there for an hour, they have to understand time management a little bit better. They have to understand, getting prepared for that activity, making sure their gym bag's packed, all of that. Not to mention that physical fitness really is the best way to alleviate depression and anxiety. It's important to have emotional goals. Do they want to feel better? Maybe work on some mindfulness, maybe work on some, specific goals related to their emotions. So if they're feeling sad, why are they feeling sad? Work through that emotion. Let's talk a little bit about social skills and relationships. This is really big for most of the kiddos I work with. A lot of the kids that I work with, they really don't have close friends. They don't have the social skills to have those close friends. So these skills actually need to be taught more directly to these kiddos. And the way that I do it is I use the peers. Program. I'm a certified peers provider, so I offer the 16-week. Well, it's a 16-week program for older kids, and it includes dating. So we talk about everything from, how to choose friends, how to have basic, interactions, how to have get-togethers, how to ask somebody else on a date, how to behave on that date, how to enter, how to exit conversation. So these are all really important skills that a child with executive functioning skill challenges might not have. So they have to be taught very directly. Same thing with time management. This is something that if they don't have the skill, it has to be taught very specifically. Another goal that you might want to work on is academic and career goals. This is really going to help a lot with motivation. If your child says, I want to be a firefighter or I want to be a lawyer, you have to look at that goal and say, okay, if you want to be a lawyer, what is that going to take? How many years of school is that going to take? What kind of classes are you going to have to take? Where do you plan on going to school? And really setting out that path so that they can see all the smaller goals they have to achieve before they can get to that bigger goal. Because that overall goal of being a lawyer is going to be overwhelming unless you break it down into smaller chunks. So setting the appropriate goals, breaking them down into shorter, smaller goals is really, really important. For some kiddos, it might just be, I want to get an A out of this math class. So it might even be even tinier goals, like, do I need to sit down with my teacher or a tutor so that I can pass this class, or maybe so that I can get an A in this class? So whatever the goal is, make sure you sit down with your child and figure out what you need to do to get to that point. And then there's another thing that I really like to talk about with kiddos is, what's your life's mission? Most people don't have a life's mission. My life's mission has been to be an educator since I was in 3rd grade. I knew I wanted to be an educator when I was in 3rd grade. I have never deviated. Everything that I have ever done has been on that same trajectory. So find out, does your child have a mission? And if they don't have a mission, help them kind of discover that mission. And the best way to do this is to try a lot of different things out. So one of the things that I did personally for my kids is I introduced them to as many things as I could. So, they got introduced to art, to, religion, to, they traveled a lot. I introduced my kids to as many things as I could. And by the time they were probably in middle school, they had a life's mission. They knew what they wanted to do with their life. Was it a specific job? No, but they knew what direction they were going. And I think if you help your child create a mission, like what do they want to do? Do they want to help people for a living? Do they want to, is their life mission to go to the moon? Whatever it is, if you create that life's mission, it's going to really help your child have that motivation to move forward. It's going to make everything else easier. And then spirituality and finance, it's really important that your children have goals specifically for that. You can have all the goals in the world, but if you don't have the money to do those things, if you don't know how to manage your money, it's going to make it more challenging. And then spirituality, I think for most people, that's their guiding force. That's what centers them. That's what keeps them balanced. It's very important because we are spirits. I mean, there's no denying that. So you have to feed that soul. So you have to find out what feeds your child's soul. Is it going to church every Sunday, or is it going hiking every Sunday? You know, and really being in nature, or is it meditating twice a day? Whatever it is that feeds your soul, find it, and that's what you need to work on with your child. For me personally, I meditate twice a day. That's what keeps me balanced. That's what keeps me centered. That's what keeps me focused. And everything else comes from that perspective. And it makes life a little bit easier for me. So find your child's goals for each one of these topics, and I think it's going to make your life a lot easier and help your child be much more motivated. If I can turn the page, here we go. So I hope this has been helpful. If you'd like to get in contact with me, here's my contact information. I do offer free consultations for anybody. It doesn't matter who it is, you know, or if you need a referral to somebody else and you're not sure who to go to, give me a call. I'd be happy to help you in any way that I can. My goal is always just to help other people be the best versions of themselves. And, you know, it's really important. So how do I help other people? One of the things that I do, if I can turn the page, is we offer one-on-one coaching. So this is executive function coaching that we do one-on-one. Within that program, we also offer hypnotherapy as needed. I rarely do just hypnotherapy. It's always in conjunction with the executive function coaching. We also offer the peer social group, and then we offer mind print assessments. The mind print assessments are a really awesome assessment that I use when I do the intake evaluations. It really helps us identify your child's strengths and weaknesses. It's designed for K through 12, but I can tell you that I use it for adults all the way up in their 70s because it really gives me a good idea of where they're at with their processing speed, their ability to, you know, think fast. It helps me look at focus, attention, problem solving. There's a whole number of skills that I look at through the mind print assessment, and it gives me that really nice objective view. It's a 1-hour test. It's basically just puzzles. It's not like any assessment you'll ever see in a school. It's very unique. I believe NASA uses it for their astronauts. It's just a wealth of information. If you're interested in a mind print assessment, I do offer those independently. I think we charge $350 for those, and that includes a 45-minute consultation, so I can explain it to you. You'll get a copy of it, the whole bit. But if you're looking for an assessment that really helps identify your child's strengths and weaknesses, this is a really great assessment. With our intake evaluations, we also offer a checklist, which is more of a subjective test. So when we do our intakes, we do the mind print assessment, the checklist, and then the interview. And those three things together give me a really nice overall view of what your child's dealing with so that we can better help you. Let's see. And then I have 2 businesses. I also own 54 Media Group. And through this business, we do graphic design, we do app design, and we do web design. And the reason why I say that is because we also have Executive Function Magazine. And Executive Function Magazine is also an app. So you can go into the App Store. You can download the app, and every month on the 10th, we have a new edition of the magazine coming out. And we have individuals from all around the world who write articles for us. Sometimes we have tips, and sometimes we have stories, cute little stories in there. It's a fun read, but we also have the website. So if you're not looking for an actual coach, maybe you're a homeschooler, this might be a great addition, a great way to grab some additional information for your kiddos or for yourself. And then we also have a podcast. I do this once a month, and you can listen to it anywhere you get podcasts, but we interview a variety of people, and it's a really nice way to get, motivation, some extra tidbits of information. This, our behind the scenes, we have a YouTube channel that has all the behind the scenes podcasts on there as well. So, and we have some of our previous presentations listed on our YouTube channel. So if you're looking for previous presentations, you can go there as well. And then we have Sale Podcasting platform coming up soon. So if you're looking to start a podcast, you can come to us for that as well. And that is all I have for you. So if you have any questions at all, feel free to call me. I'm always here to assist in any way I can. And if you have any questions, now would be a great time.
Wow, thank you, Fawzya. This is fantastic. Also, you're so busy. A lot of different things that you're creating. That's amazing. I had a question.
Yes.
It was going back to online learning. We have a lot of parents that are being told by different educational professionals and psychologists that online learning isn't the most effective for their child. And sometimes, though, for a certain content or topic, that is the only option for them. So I felt like you maybe answered this a little bit with some of your strategies that you gave, but do you have any more ideas or support for when parents are really leery and they have the idea and they understanding that maybe for their learning, online learning isn't the most effective, but then they're kind of having to do that. So I know you mentioned making sure like the tabs, there's only one and not multiple, but do you have any other suggestions or tips for parents with online learning and how just to improve their student success for that area?
It's all about grabbing their attention. So I do everything that I do online, and I tell my clients, if you show up, all you have to do is show up. I'm going to grab their attention. So I get a lot of success just based on the activities that we do. They're interactive. So I think where people run into trouble is when you're one-on-one, you can grab that student's attention. When you have more than one student, it's easy for those students to kind of drift away. So one of the things that you could do as a parent is maybe afterwards ask your child, what did you learn? Or have them take notes while they're listening. But it's all about grabbing that student's attention. So the only way that I can make online learning more effective for multiple students is make sure that student takes notes and then reviews their notes right afterwards. If you review your notes right after class, you're going to reduce your amount of time that you have to study. Does that help?
Yeah, that's really, really helpful. I think you're absolutely right. So for those parents that are learning and just feel like online learning is the most effective, maybe stick to that one-on-one opportunities and make sure, like you said, it's someone engaging. I mean, right there, those two pieces of insight is so helpful because again, sometimes that's the only option for services in certain fields and areas, but they're just really leery on the effectiveness of the information and the skills being retained by the child because of the online learning component. So no, I think that was super helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and I think if schools are going to continue on this path, they need to make the learning very effective by having it more interactive.
This was amazing. I learned a lot. I work with several of my students have this, and the organization, it just reiterated to me what to do and the small goals. I mean, just setting, it's just great. So thank you for sharing.
No, my pleasure. And one of the hardest things about, talking broadly about executive function is because everyone's different and everyone's needs are different. And, so if anyone has specific questions about a situation or a specific client, they're welcome to call me and I can help them better one-on-one. It's just a really interesting field because, I have to assess every single individual before I can really help them, because it's there's not one size fits all.
And you offer a free consultation, consultation. So
Yes.
Parents can call for free and be able to discuss their child with you and get some action steps from you.
Yeah, and you don't have to work with me in order to call and ask for help. I help people without them paying me. I take on the most challenging clients, but a lot of my clients, I really just give them tips and they move on. Or I might give them the mind print assessment, or we might just do the intake evaluation and I give them, tips on how to work on their own. So it doesn't necessarily have to be like this really expensive thing. You can call me and say, hey, I just need to know, who to go to for a psych eval. I can give you that referral. Or you can say, I just want the mind print assessment. I homeschool my child and I just want to know where they're at. Fantastic. I can give you the mind print assessment. And in fact, I'll even give you the checklist. That way you know where your child stands. And I would highly recommend the mind print assessment for homeschoolers. Take it at the beginning of the year, take it again at the end of the year. I work with students who are homeschooled, and we do the mind print assessment at the beginning of the year. I work with their executive functioning skills throughout the year, and then we do the mind print assessment again at the end of the year, just to see their growth. And it's a really nice objective test that only takes an hour, and it's just a series of puzzles. There's nothing difficult about it.
And that's amazing. From that, you get everything you need about executive function just from them doing a variety of different puzzles. I think that's an amazing assessment. And it's also, we talked about like how most parents are like, well, it's like surveys and behavioral observations and checklists and rating skills. And I know that's one component of it, but your main part of it is doing the puzzles with the mind print assessment. So I think that's a really nice breath of fresh air for parents to get an assessment for executive functioning that looks and is different and is challenging the brain in a different way.
And for, just so people know, I don't need you to come with a diagnosis. I can do this mind print assessment and just look at what the child's weaknesses and strengths are and work with that. So if a parent doesn't have the finances to pay the $5,000 for an evaluation, they can come to me and get this assessment and, create a plan moving forward that's not going to be as expensive.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a great deal. So yeah. I do have one more question. Cindy kind of hit on it and it popped the question back into my head. I have a question about the goals. So do you have any forms on your website or recommendation for forms for goals, or how do you, like, what is your recommendations? And again, I know this is very specific to children, but just for creating like a tracking program or incentive program related to the goals. I think one of the keys you said was make a big goal, but then break it up into smaller parts. So I don't know if you can elaborate a bit more and just give a couple of tips about when you're working with, when we're working with our children and creating goals and implementing that goal system.
Sure. So when I work with younger kids, I just take a piece of paper and I have them write, one or two things that they want to work towards. And then what we do is we say, okay, if your overall goal is to get to get an A in your math class, what do you have to do to get an A in that math class? Well, they might, and I let them come up with the reasons or the sub goals. So they might say, well, I need help. Okay, great. Would tutoring do that for you? Yes. Okay, so maybe once a week tutoring would be the sub goal. Okay, so that's for a younger child. An older child, I might do it on Excel, and we might say, okay, we're going to have categories of goals. So we might have maybe health and education, maybe they have social goals, maybe they have job goals, so they want to get a job. So you have 3 categories. So underneath those categories, we might write something more specific. For example, their job goal might be, I need to get a job by May so that I have it for the whole summer. Okay, great. How are you going to do that? The sub goal might be, I'm going to go on to Indeed and put my application on there. I'm going to take my resume and I'm going to go to 3 different places every single week and hand them my resume and ask for an interview. It might be talking to family members to see if they can, have a referral. And then at the top, we'd have the dates. Okay, so every week, and we would have an update of what was done at the end of each week. And that way they can see their progress. They've assessed this goal every single week, and they can see not only the progress, but when they've completed the goal. And at the very bottom of the Excel, you have little tabs, so you could do it month by month. You can say, okay, January, these are my goals, and then the next month you copy it and you move it over to February. February, you meet one of the goals, you remove it. That way you can go back through the year and look and see how many goals you've accomplished.
Oh, I like that. I like the idea of doing it on Excel. And then you said to do goals in different areas. I think that's a fantastic idea. I do know if we get a certain number of goals, that will be overwhelming to the individual. Is there maybe a suggestion on a limit or a number to not, like, where is that balance and making sure you're not doing too many goals when you have an older kid, you're starting to do them in the different areas?
So I usually like I have a series of topics that I like to have. And so I like them to be, what I usually do is I have people make goals for every single category. We usually do it at the beginning of the year like everyone else does. We do health and fitness goals, business and career, or for our school kids, we do school education goals. We do family and friends. We do relationships, finance, personal development. Then we do fun and recreation, and then spiritual goals. So for example, if we backtracked, spiritual goals might be, I'm going to go to church once a week, or I'm going to meditate twice a week. Fun and recreation might be, I'm going to go for a hike every single weekend, or I've really wanted to learn how to sail, so I'm going to take a sailing class. Personal development might be, I'm going to take that mind print assessment and see where I stand. So you've got 3 different categories that you have different goals for. They're not all going to be week by week goals. So some of them are just going to be a one-time thing. Like, I'm just going to take this mind print assessment and see where I stand. And then from that, you can have sub goals for personal development. Finance might be something as simple as, finance might be something as simple as, I'm going to save my allowance money or save half my allowance money. Relationships might be, I'm going to learn better communication skills, or I'm going to take the peers class and learn how to have better relationships so that I can have a peer group, so I can have a friend group. That's a 16-week course. That one can be monitored week by week. School or education goals can be as simple as, I'm going to have a tutor, or I'm going to stop by the disability office and make sure that I have my accommodations in place. So they don't always have to be huge goals. They can be something simple. Health and fitness can be as simple as, I'm going to go for a walk every single day to make sure that I'm feeling good about my body and that I have some exercise every day. And so I recommend those topics, and then just kind of create the goals, have those categories on the Excel spreadsheet, and then have the sub goals as they come up. You don't have to work on every goal every single week. You work on 1 or 2 things a week, and then it will balance out.
Awesome. Oh my goodness, that was so helpful and really broke it down for me a lot more. That makes a lot more sense. Thank you. And I think you're just saying too, like, you're not working on every goal every week. Like, you make them and then you come back and kind of, work on whichever one needs that support at that time. I think that's so helpful too. Thank you so much. That was so helpful to get a little bit more details about the goal making, because I know making goals is so important and so helpful. So thank you.
Yeah, and you're welcome. And it's important to assess them regularly, though. You want to assess them weekly. So I usually recommend once a week. You sit down for an hour, assess your goals, create your, your calendar for the week. Years ago, there was a study done that for every hour you spend planning, you save 7. So if you spend an hour a week, when I usually do mine on Sunday mornings, I go to my desk and I plan out my week, what I'm going to be doing, and I look at my goals. I look at, everything in my calendar, and I feel like when I'm going through my week, I've already had my rehearsal. I know what I need to do.
Yeah, that's great.
Awesome. Cindy, do you have any more questions?
No.
Awesome. I asked Mike too, and you're really great at explaining them. Well, we really appreciate you doing the presentation to an executive function, because I know a lot of parents and a lot of educators need support to help learners in this area, and I felt like you really broke it up. So we really appreciate you.